All right, Bill, let's get this going.
Sounds good, Randy. Thank you.
Sure. Welcome to another session of Blue Island 101. My name is Randy Heuser, and with me is Bill Farrenwald. Today we'll be talking about the roads of the city of Blue Island, who owns them, and who's responsible to maintain them.
All right, Randy, that sounds like another fascinating topic that you've chosen for us. Everyone wants to know about the streets. And as always, we are monitoring the YouTube comments and the Zoom chat when we're live, of course. So if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to type away and we will do our very best to answer them during the session.
All right, so Bill, this is a hot topic for all of us in Blue Island.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is.
So let's go over who owns what streets, the conditions of the city-owned streets, and what it will take to repair them and hopefully create a sustainable plan so that the streets will never get to this point again.
That is a really good thing, Randy. I'm glad we're doing that. And Blue Island is not a real big town, and we're like 2.5 by 2.5 miles. But maybe everyone out there would like to think for a minute about how many miles of streets there are in Blue Island, and then you, knowing the answer, can tell us that answer.
Okay, so let's just start with this. So the highlighted streets, Bill, you want to go over and I'll kind of do the...
You bet. Okay, yeah, for sure. So this is a very interesting map, and this is probably the best thing to do is to go over this map. It's the Chicago Metropolitan Area for Planning's map and report to us called Pavement Data Collection and Pavement Management System Implementation Plan, which is a long title, which is basically it's an inventory of our streets and the condition of our streets. And it's really fascinating. This report was presented to the City Council a couple of months ago. And Randy, this is the map that shows the streets of this, all the streets of the city right there. So this kind of gives you a cue about who owns them. The highlighted streets are the ones that the city owns. And the ones that are not highlighted are owned by the state of Illinois. And I'll name those off. It will start at the top of the map. Well, Western Avenue is not. Vincennes is not owned by the city. 127th Street, Gregory, Vermont, and into Wyerton Road, how it leads off into Wyerton, Broadway, and 139th Street. Those are all pretty significant streets that run through our town, but that are not owned by the city. And even though the state owns these streets, we still do light maintenance, and of course we plow the streets, and the city does pay us to do that to the tune of just over $100,000 a year.
So let me get to the conditions.
All right, this is the good part.
Yeah, so CMAP came...
Maybe not, or maybe not.
So CMAP came through and they went through our city and they ranked all the streets using the color code you see above. So if it was 100, it was green, it was good, all the way down to a deep red and gray where it was a serious fail.
And Randy, it was kind of cool how they did this, as I recall from them explaining. They had this truck that has like I don't know, some kind of a camera or radar sensor or something on the back, and they drove it up and down every single street. And I think it took an image like every 20 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it recorded all the condition of the streets, the cracks, the depths of the cracks, the width, and all that kind of stuff. So it just automatically and accurately, without any human,
no judgment calls, if you will. Yeah, it just went.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool to see how they did that.
So you can see here, pretty much our streets are not really in very good shape. That's no surprise to anyone.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah.
Indeed. Okay, so that brings us to the question of how do we fix the streets? And of course, that's pretty much about money. And there are a few ways that the streets can be funded. Local funds can be used. They're obviously in pretty scarce supply. And the most recent example of that was Francisco and Edson this year. But these funds have to come out of the general fund. We don't have a dedicated road fund, so it's just whatever monies that we have available. And so whatever money gets spent on the streets can't be spent on other services or programs, or they must be reduced. And there just, frankly, aren't that many places that we have to cut. The second major source of funding for street repairs and upgrading is TIF, tax increment funds. And several projects were done in the recent past. The area around the hospital was done, as well as in California Gardens, to name a couple. But there are restrictions to using TIF funds that are very important to know. That is that the roads have to be in or service a TIF area. And most residential streets are not in a TIF. They generally have to do with commercial areas. So for the most, that's why the hospital was an area that could be done that way. Then the third thing that I'm kind of, happily familiar with in the fourth ward, and a little progress, is that in the county and the city have a very good relationship, and we usually get about $250,000, $250,000 a year, which can do about a block or so of streets. And recent CDBG, Community Development Block Grant projects, are Lewis Street and 123rd Place. And the next one to be done is, like, I'm happy because it's in the fourth ward, is Collins Street between Vincennes and Western. And this is about a block and a half. The project was to have been done in 2020, but the pandemic issues with the delays and everything, and the pandemic came in and it got delayed. And so the project will be done in 2021. And then but CDBG granting is not only limited, but there are limitations to where it can be used. And an important restriction to CDBG funding is that the area that the funding is applied to has to qualify based on the income level in the immediate area. So not all areas qualify for that funding.
Yeah, so the question is, what's next? And this is where we need to establish a road fund. That was it'll help us do for street repairs. A group of us put forth a non-binding referendum question last year, and it passed overwhelmingly.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, 90%. I think it was pretty darn close to 90%.
It was, yeah.
The city council recently passed a local gas tax, and those funds need to be deposited directly into the new road fund and used only for street repairs.
And I agree, Randy. And I think that this is, an issue that we've seen over the years. Legitimately, the city doesn't have a lot of extra money, but there is there's just no discipline, frankly, to, saving the pennies that we can, or the nickels or the dimes. And so I agree.
So, and to that point, the question is, how will this help? Bill mentioned earlier about the Francisco and Edison project that, was paved in 2020, and that it was also appropriated for in general fund. We had to put it back off until 2020. Well, because this project wasn't done when it was appropriated for, those funds got used for other purposes in 2019. And that's the thing, additional funds were then appropriated for that project in 2020 for its repair, but everything gets kicked down the road. The can keeps getting kicked down the road. So this is a great example of why we need to do a road fund, and we need to dedicate resources to fixing our streets, because the best plans, Alderman will tell you that we appropriated for that. Well, you did, but when it didn't get done, cash was used somewhere else. So,
and I think the other thing, Randy, that it's important for everyone to know that the magnitude of the issue is significant. We had a study done. This is probably 4 or 5 years ago now, and the estimate at that time to do, to bring all the city streets and the sewers, because that's often a part of it. To bring that all up to a state of good repair would be $30 million, and the city's operating budget is only $16 million. So you can see it's a big issue, and I don't want to make it sound like that's that's just completely overwhelming, because it's not. It can be broken down into parts. We can get matching grants for much of what we do, and there's the CBDG and all kinds of things. But nevertheless, you've got to keep at it.
Right, and if we get a grant writer in to start looking at different ways to do stuff, and we start dedicating those funds, and we put that gas tax to it, we get a smaller compared to the gas tax amount of MFT money from the state every year, and there's eligible expenses for that, and that's that is like road salt. Okay, that's great. Or maybe a truck here and there. But if were to really dedicate money just for street repairs and not play the lottery shell game where we say, oh, well, that's MFT eligible. Yeah, we want to put money towards our street repairs. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not. It's going to take several years to fully implement, and then it has to be a sustainable plan to keep our streets maintained so that we never get into this.
And also there's, as we do that, technology, the state of the art have improved in terms of maintenance of streets. And some folks may have noticed around town that some of the streets, there's, I don't know whether it was Union or New or something. There were some streets around that area a year or two ago that it sounds kind of basic, but the street's relatively new, but starting to get some kind of thin seam cracks down it. And those are sealed. There's a process that you go through and you seal those, and that can extend the life of the street for like 4 or 5 years. So those are things that, we'll also want to make sure we do, because like you say, we don't want to be back in this position.
Right. So, we just touched briefly on what needs to be done. And, there's no quick answer to this problem. This has been going on. I remember knocking on a gentleman's door in 2013, on Orchard Street, I think it was, between Western and Greenwood. And he said, the last time my street was paved, or even any attention was paid to it, was Mayor Hart in the 60s. Yeah. Well, I kind of took a step back and went, wow, yeah, he's right, and there's been trials and tribulations all along in operating the city, and I'm not placing blame on anyone, but it's just it is something that really needs to be a priority put and a sustainable plan put in place to make sure that we get our city streets.
It's like anything else. You put it in the terms of us regular people. If you buy a car, and often people get a loan. Well, you pay that off at $300 a month or whatever, and after a while, you've paid for a $50,000 car. Yeah. And so it's a 50, or maybe not 50, but $30,000. It sounds like it is a lot of money. I don't have that kind of money just plunked down.
Right.
But if or I could save for it, but either way, a relatively modest amount of money you can afford, if you do it consistently and you are dedicated about it, can add up to something.
And that's what we haven't done as a city for years. So, more important things come up, absolutely. But if we had a road fund established and we put that money in there, kind of like a savings account or a Christmas club account, if you do that, and it'll take a long time. Because no one wants their taxes raised to do a bond issue. And that's the only other way besides to do it. No one wants that. So if we take a measured approach and appropriate funds to the road fund every year, we can make this happen. We can make this happen.
So Randy, I quizzed you at the beginning of the program here. How many miles of streets are there in Blue Island? Did you happen to know the answer to that question?
I do have that pretty handy. It's going to take me just a quick minute.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay,
but what the heck?
I will pull that page up right now.
They probably have it down to the 100th of a mile or something.
Well, it's darn near. Yeah, it's darn near.
It was pretty cool technology. I was really impressed with that.
This is actually from the
Okay.
2014 report, but it's 45.7 miles, and I think we talked. It was like 45.9, but it's real close. This is what we're looking at, and this report you alluded to earlier, Bill, has it broken down by ward.
Yeah, and we again, just to give you some magnitude, earlier we had talked about the $250,000 grant that does a block or a block and a half. So we're talking 45 miles. So it's a lot of work, but it needs to be done, and done in the right way, it will get done.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Well, I think that pretty much touches to to my favorite phrase, the 30,000-foot view of what's going on with our city streets.
For sure. All right. So again, if you are listening on YouTube, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button, and then you'll get the notifications of the next Blue Island 101 event. as well as being able to view past sessions.
So that pretty much does our non-political,
We're
if
getting
you
into
will.
that season.
Yeah, we're getting to that season, Bill. That pretty much does. We've touched everything from the mayor's office on down to the streets, the police, fire, and everything. So going on, our from now on, our sessions are going to be introducing our candidates. We're going to be talking about what we think needs to be done in the city, and and in the schools. So we're going to be kind of moving on to the next phase of Blue Island 101. So
Well, needless to say, I'm excited about it because, as you know, I'm running for alderman with you, and I think you put together a great group of people. There are some very experienced people running with you, and then there are some new people with fresh ideas.
Yeah.
And the election that's coming up in the city is as important as one has ever been, because every single office is up for election for the first time, and they'll all be for 4 years. So whoever we put in place is going to be busy. And you've got some great school board candidates.
Yeah.
And even some other great candidates running. So very good, Randy. And we'll get a chance to talk about all that later.
Right. All right. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for listening. We hope this session has been informative, and we